Hi, fully online Comp 1. Hope you're well tonight. Hope also that you're staying safe with this ice that we've had. I got a little nervous last night listening to or studying what the weather prognosticators were saying. When Minnesota has trouble in mind, I always check the forecast for my northern kingdom and my southern kingdom where I live. And I'm cautious would probably be a better word to describe how I felt. And my dean was fine with me teaching live Zoom today, so it's been a long day sitting at this desk, big beautiful desk I have, staring into this lens of this expensive camera. And the last thing I got to get done today before I make my wife a yummy supper is get one more lesson out to you. News from poetry. My podium is being assembled through the forest here over at St. John's Abbey Woodshop. And I'm in a high state of excitement about the idea of getting that. I'm very, very, very happy. A little bit more news from poetry. I don't know if you'd find this interesting or not. Hospitality is a huge thing for me. And I'm picking up Maya C. Popa 1 week from tomorrow. And she'll be reading in the Chalberg at noon on Friday of that week. I hope some of you think about coming. There'll be I'll say this next week. There'll be a poetry reading at noon, a book signing meet and greet for the public, and then she'll put on a very informal craft talk at about 1:30. And so if you can't come to the reading, maybe you'll come to the craft talk. You might want to find, $15 or so, because after you sit through that reading, you might want a copy of one of her 2 books that I'm going to have there for sale with the help of our bookstore. I'd like to start off with a poem by Maya C. Popa today that'll take a little bit of setup. And I think I really only have one subject today, and it's very much a subject that is integral to any unit that has as its hope style, the study of style. I'm trying to make you more aware, more conscious of some of the rhetorical decisions that you make with language. And style is not easy to study, and we're not done yet. We got a ways to go, at least as far as what I think is important to study about style. And you simply can't even brush up against it as an infinite subject without reminding students to just think for a little bit about the figures of speech, the figura. And there are over 200. There's a nun that had a lot of time on her hands, apparently. She cataloged, Sister Miriam Joseph, about 242 figures of speech. And I bet we got more now, because that's a long time ago. I was young when I learned that. And the principal figure of speech, the main one, is the metaphor. Everything comes from that. I'm not an expert on it, but I am a metaphorian, and I collect them. And I'm going to find some different ways to get you thinking about that. And I'm going to get some help with the end of our video today from another woman. I'm going to get help from 2 women today, 2 poets. One a friend and one an almost friend, an about to be friend, Maya. And I want to pull in Valzhyna Mort today. The only thing that's good about online readings from the days where I was locked in my house or doing virtual readings is that they're available. You can just grab them and put them to use. And that I kind of like that. I like that a lot, actually. And let's just get going here. I want to read a poem for you that is an imagining of what Noah's wife might have been like in the Bible. I think we would all agree that the women parts are a little bit underwritten. Like, where's Noah's wife? He had one. Why doesn't she get any lines? I don't think she gets any lines. Same thing with Moses' wife. What's up with that? She was there with them, all that journeying with the Israelites out of the desert. And so this is an imagining of that. I don't want you put out by it. There's a couple of references here. There's a reference to Mount Ararat, which apparently is the Armenian mountain where, since the 9th century, we have believed that Noah's Ark landed. And there is another reference here to a mythological figure that you might not know of named Sisyphus. Sisyphus was a guy whose punishment in Hades was to, every day, get up when the sun came up and roll this rock up this hill all day. And then, of course, every night, the Greeks were all about irony. The minute he gets the rock up to the top of the mountain, something goes wrong. He slips or something or other happens, and the rock rolls all the way down, and he's got to get up in the morning and roll it back up again to infinity. Life can feel like that when it's not going so great. And so let's start with this poem, and I'll just keep moving. This is going to get a little bit glary because I got to see it off my computer. Letter to Noah's wife, Maya C. Popa. You are never mentioned on Ararat or elsewhere. but I know a woman's hand in salvation when I see it. Lately, I'm torn between despair and ignorance. I'm not a vegetarian. Shop plastic. Use an air conditioner. Is this what happens before it all goes fluvial? Do the selfish grow self-conscious by the withering begonias? Lately, I worry every black dress will have to be worn to a funeral. New York, a bullion, eroded filigree, anything but illness. I beg the plagues, but shiny crows or nuclear rain. Not a drop in London, May through June. I bask in the wilt by the golden hour light. Lately, only lately, it is late. Tucking our families into the safeties of the past. My children, will they exist by the time it's irreversible? Will they live astonished at the thought of ice, not pulled from the mouth of a machine? Which parent will be the one to break the myth? The Arctic wasn't Sisyphus's snowy hill. Noah's wife, I'm wringing my hands, not knowing how to know and move forward. Was it you who gathered flowers whence the earth had dried? How did you explain the light to all the animals? I like that a lot. Can't wait to meet her. Can't wait to create another first-class literary event, not only for my college, but for the Brainerd Lakes region. All of the poetry readings that I host are free and open to the public. So it would be neat to see you there. It'd be neat to just run up and say, Jonathan, I'm your online student. Would be that would warm my heart. So let's just put it this way. I think I'll just repeat things that I said to Staples. I've been saying these things for years. And let's start with a little bit of a story. My sons are so big. When my sons were little, this is everything to a teacher, right? Teachers talk about their kids when they're little all the time. We got a brand new historian, a PhD named Dr. Corey at CLC, and apparently he talks about his child all the time. He's got a little girl, brand new parent, and I'm so jealous. I've told him I'd go right back to the throw-up buckets and the car seats in a second. I'd go back now like that. But I'm telling a story that happened a long time ago, similar to the deal with my other story that I told you about Jeffy. There was this day, I think this proves something. Let's give it a whirl and see if it is illustrative, as we would say. I remember a long ago day, and I remember the year it was because I can remember where I was. We were in what I called my rental bungalow, which is where we lived when we were building what for me is a dream house, where I knew I would raise my family. And Jeffy was a little bit older than the high chair story, and he was on a pillow. He was on a pillow, and I'm laying on the floor. I don't know if you know this, but lake homes in the 70s, we were so confused in Minnesota that we actually put shag carpet on the walls of cabins for insulation. So I'm laying in a cabin that has burnt orange carpet on the wall. I actually vacuumed it once to see if it could be done. And Jeffy's bouncing on this pillow. He's bouncing up and down and up and down. And he's like doing what every little kid does. He's repeating the same phrase again and again and again. He must have said 50 times, my pillow, my pillow, my pillow. He thought he was hilarious. And I'm laying there, and as much as I love that child infinitely, I was a little bit bored. I'm laying there thinking, satirically, okay, it's your pillow. It's been established. You've got that pillow. You got it, bro. And then there was this magical moment where he stopped, and he smiled even more broadly, and his eyes even got a little bit wide, and I could see an idea form above his head. The light bulb moment, right? It went boom, and he jumped up, and he didn't walk over to me. He ran to me, jumped on me, and started bouncing his butt on me, exactly the way he was doing for like half an hour, saying, my pillow, my pillow, my pillow, my pillow. Now that was a really big moment for me because it was his first metaphor. Pillow can be pillow, and so too can Dad be a pillow. And I was really happy about that because I knew he was going to be an English major and a crack poet. I tell the story because it really proves how early in our lives we begin to think symbolically, where one thing can represent another. I know you must be all aware of it, and a couple of you are raising children, so it's yes, we think concretely when necessary, but We are all natural-born metaphorians. Life is interesting because of it. Language is interesting because of it. Every word is a metaphor. We know that. And just to review a little bit, and some of you have been out of school a little while, some of you are coming back, most of you are pretty darn young, all you Pine River kids. And I hope you get that whole high school watching my videos. I want to be on every screen in that school. It's certain that it's like a school thing. Generally, the figures of speech are introduced to us when we're maybe 7th or 8th graders. And we're given just a glimpse of them, right? We all learn, every 8th grader in the world can tell you that metaphor is a comparison not using like or as, and simile is a comparison that does use like or as. And you know, your middle school teachers maybe have covered, when you were little and cute, younger and cute, personification, right? They probably mentioned hyperbole, and so they could feel like English teachers. They mentioned litotes, which is the opposite. But when you, excuse me, gosh, I'll bet that sounds horrible. I've been talking a lot today. Juice. When you really start looking into it, the figures of speech they get really complicated, and they have crazy names. And you don't need to, I gotta be clear here, you don't need to study the figures of speech really necessarily to become a better writer. I once told a class, you guys, I got a book for you. Let's learn every figure of speech there is. We'll do like 10 a week. And this long ago AP English class, about a month into that project, basically said, Johnson, this sucks. And we abandoned the project because the names were too crazy. And I wanted them to learn the actual names. You know, moving down the list a little bit into the more complicated ones, we have, you know, metonymy. We have synecdoche, which is a part of speech that is part for a whole for a part. And the Staples kids didn't even need to know the word chiasmus because they proved to me they knew what it was today when they finished the phrase of John Kennedy, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. That's chiasmus. There's a mirroring going on. You take the phrase and you flip it like a mirror. And there's a whole website devoted to it. You could look it up, CHIAMUS. There's a collection there, right? Like never let a kiss fool you and never let a fool kiss you. I love those. It's just so fun. But metaphor is principally what I'm going to be talking about a little bit today, and probably a little bit with your next lesson when we'll take it a little bit further. But the study of metaphor for me always begins with having show and tell. And we're going to have show and tell in this class, and I got a plan for it. But the show and tell is going to be a metaphoric show and tell. I'm going to create, you know, I haven't done the greatest keeping the discussion thing going because I'm just overwhelmed. But I'm going to create another thread, and I'll talk about it in a minute. I'll talk about it now. You'll have a few days to go onto that thread and put up a picture of yourself, hopefully you, holding up something important to you. It's metaphoric show and tell. I need you to bring to that discussion forum a metaphor, a thing, an inanimate object that has tremendous value to you that it wouldn't have to me or anyone else in the class. Now, I in recent years have gotten completely obsessed with the idea of inanimate objects and details as they occur in stories. I love Chekhov's great quote on this. The famous Russian writer Chekhov said, you know, if you open up a story, you open up a novel, maybe I've already said this, and you see a gun on the wall, it's a rule. Sometime during that story, that gun has got to go off. And you're going to bring your object, you're going to hold it up on the camera, and then write a little bit about it. Tell us why that thing that is a thing to you and wouldn't be a thing to us matters. Is it sentimental value? Is it symbolic value? Thinking in this way is an okay way to get going on thinking about figurative speech and all the symbolism in our lives. That's what rhetoric is, the study of symbolic action. No, it won't happen on a photograph, but I had to warn my Staples kids today. Hey, when you do this, don't pick out something that might be hard to talk about. And I let them understand what I meant by telling them a story about, I think the first time I ever did metaphoric show and tell in class. It's an original idea. It's an actual Jeff Johnson idea. I don't have very many of those. About 91, 92, I told some Johnnies and Bennies with an extra class that I was teaching at St. John's in addition to my high school load. Late afternoon, extracurricular kind of deal. I was teaching on a first year symposium, and I told 8 Johnnies and 8 Bennies the same thing I just said to the Staples kids today. Look, don't pick out something that's going to make you bawl. And I showed up for class 2 days later, 70-minute class, man, every other day. I show up 2 days later, and it's like they all wanted to do the opposite of what I told them. Because no less than 3 women that day had started bawling, and I had to send them out of the classroom because they had picked up out something that was just too hard to talk about. I said, go out in the hallway and cry out those tears. And by the end of that class, I was completely exhausted. And there was a young man in there with just red hair named Tony Pavelka from Farming, Minnesota. He was the last student to speak. And as he was going into his bag, his lip was already going. He was already starting to cry. I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get this kid through school, through his first year? Well, you know what was going on. It was the first month or 2 of school. They were all homesick. They were all getting used to university life, and they all brought these precious things that their grandparents or family members had given them. Tony's lip was going, and he was bawling already as he took this football out of his bag. And he let us know that that football was one that he and his friend who lived on the farm next door would use in the late afternoon, early evenings. They'd call one another after chores and say, hey, you want to throw the football around? And they would each walk to the end of their long farm driveways and play catch underneath that big, flat, southern Minnesota sky. And he also let us know that he hadn't found anybody to play catch with yet. And I very nearly canceled class right then and said, let's go outside right now. I'm not too good at it, but I can throw a baseball, but I'll take a shot at it. I didn't. We kept moving. And I worried. It's amazing how unnecessary my worry was about that guy. He would later be the valedictorian of his class and offer the commencement address. He shouldn't even have been in that class. He should have been in an honors FYS instead of a common FYS symposium. And we are friends still. I didn't see him across the rest of his career, but he circled back to my office senior year looking troubled. There was a cloud on him. Spring of his senior year, he came in and he said, I need your help. I need advice. I said, I got plenty of advice. I'm full of it. All English majors are full of it. And he told me something serious, that he had fallen in love with his best friend's girlfriend. I said, instantly, steal her. Steal her. I know you, not him. Steal her or steal her affections right now. I did the same thing my senior year of university. Do it, and I'll read at your wedding. And he did exactly that, and he married a woman from South Vietnam named An Tu. And pretty quickly, I was reading at their wedding, and pretty quickly after that, they had triplets, triple strollers, triple beds, cribs, etc. And he's been happy ever since. Now I'm going to go to Professor Valzhyna Mort here. I'm going to splice in a little tape. We'll end with her. Try to stick with her. Her accent's a little bit thick, but this unbelievable Belarusian poet who I hosted virtually in the pandemic and lockdown times, I'm hoping to bring her this fall along with 2 other Eastern European poets for real, because I got to meet her in person. And she is sitting in a very famous writer's office, the Russian writer Vladimir Nabokov, who taught at Cornell, where she is safe right now. And let's just let her talk. Study this, take this in. And yeah, I'm going to a bigger, better teacher, but I got friends, and she's one of them. And I hope you enjoy this. I'm plunking you right down in the middle of the virtual reading. She's just read a poem called The Purse, and she's going to be talking about details, talking about the importance of inanimate objects in our lives. You guys have them. I know that you've got a special drawer of things that matter to you, and we all have such a drawer. And I hope you save all that stuff, all of it. I will see you very soon.
At the center of that poem that I just read is this screaming purse. And inanimate objects are very important to me to the poems in this particular book that I'm reading from, because I come from a country of what can be called an empty family archive, a country of long censorship, burnt documents, closed archives, and the kind of ideology of triumph and victory that is the only story that is allowed, even in private. In my family, for example, when we would talk about the past or ancestors, it would be always in hushed tones and always with a disclaimer of the fact that it could not be repeated anywhere else, which was true for so many families everywhere. Because Belarus has been, well, it could be, if you want to study this history of 20th century in Europe, the worst of it, it's enough to study Belarus in the 20th century. World War I went through us and brought a lot of dislocation. The Stalin's repressions in the 30s affected millions of families, and a lot of executions without any trials took place in the 30s. That's already my grandmother's lifetime. Then World War II, we were occupied for 3 years. Every third person died in Belarus. During World War II, there were the genocides of the peasants and the Holocaust of Belarusian Jews. So the country was completely devastated. And of course, afterwards, the Soviet experiment was also not particularly a human-friendly experiment, which kind of came to its climax with the Chernobyl explosion in the 80s when I was 4. And so there is very little witnessing. There's very little left of alternative history, and it all has to be gathered by crumbs. I always feel that objects, trees, purses, doors, tables, whatever is left, whatever survived, because humans could not survive, is imbued with stories, with testimony. And it is the job of an artist, the job of a poet, to listen to the testimony of these languageless beings.